Hey everyone, and welcome to the football experience on the pod with Caleb and Nev tonight. The regular crew, we're back. And Nev, how you going?
Yeah, good man. It's been it was a good start to the week, but the weather's been a little bit poor the last couple of days. But yeah, other than that, it's been pretty good.
Oh damn! And you getting these withdrawals from club football yet?
Now that we're closer to the weekend, no, I'm feeling
You can see it.
yeah, I'm seeing it. It's in like the vision, and yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
We're pumped. We're ready. All
The
right.
the
So,
only thing though,
yep.
Arsenal's playing on Monday, so that feels like it's a world away. So rather than like playing on a Saturday or a Sunday, so gonna have to wait to get my dose of Arsenal.
Your Ramsdale, Saka,
Yeah,
Martinelli dose.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, so we're done with another couple of match days of European qualifiers. Just to touch on, we've got our 5 African representatives in the tournament now. Obviously, the big story coming out of that was no Mo Salah. We won't have Mo Salah at the World Cup, and it was kind of like an Italy and Portugal situation in a way where we knew we wouldn't have Egypt or Senegal in the next World Cup. I think the right team went through. You look at the Senegal team; they have a lot of quality, probably the most quality in Africa, and obviously is demonstrated by the fact that they're current AFCON champions. But as the door closed for Mo Salah on the World Cup, thankfully we get Cristiano Ronaldo at the World Cup at the end of the year, and another star player, first timer, Robert Lewandowski. And I think that's great because we get to see, well, one of the all timers really playing at the next World Cup, his first one. Finally, it's been a long time coming. And it got me thinking about Robert Lewandowski because you go on Wikipedia, which is obviously they tell you not to use it, but that's my go to place because it's the easiest place to find all the numbers. And the numbers for Robert Lewandowski have been staggering over the last 6 or 7 seasons, and especially the last 3. The last 3 seasons, he's hit 45 club goals in all competitions in each of the last 3 seasons. And as you know, that gets me thinking about past players. So I use 45 as a barometer when I was looking through the past great strikers to have hit that landmark. And in my research, I've come up with all the names, and I've probably missed 1 or 2, but if people want to dig in that deep, then good luck to them. I wasn't willing to go that deep, but I've looked at the players to hit 45 goals in seasons, and we have the regular suspects, Leo Messi, 8 times 45 goals in a season. And that includes 4 lots of 50, 1 of 60, and 1 of 70 in a club for his club in the season. Wow. Incredible. 73 that season. That was obviously the season where he broke Gerd Muller's record for goals in a calendar year. Then right behind him, Cristiano Ronaldo's done it 6 times. 4 times he hit 50, 2 times he hit 60. And they were all in a row, all 6. So 45 goals, 6 seasons in a row at Real Madrid. Really quite staggering. Pele did it 4 times, 3 lots of 50, 1 lot of 60 in Brazil for Santos, obviously. And you might say, hey, he was playing in Brazil, but he was playing in Brazil at a time where the migration of players still wasn't quite established. He did a couple of those lots at the late 50s and 1 in the middle of the 60s. So he was still playing against his fellow Brazilian World Cup winners in that league. So it was a strong league at the time where he did it. So I don't think you could take anything away from 4 lots of 45 goals in a season. Eusebio did it 3 times for Benfica in the 60s as well. Luis Suarez has done it twice, once for Ajax and once for Barcelona in one of the great underrated seasons. He got 59 goals in that season in his first full season at Barcelona. Obviously, suspension the first season he went there, but that full season he got 59 goals. A really underrated season there. I guess when you play with Messi, that's what happens. And then the other last multiple player to do it who I found, Mario Jardel did it once for Porto and once for Sporting in the thousands in the Portuguese league. So that one's a bit of a trivia question. And then we go to the single time 45 goals in a season. Zlatan did it once. Cavani did it once, both at PSG. Ian Rush did it once in Liverpool's European Cup winning side in 83, 84. Ronaldo, original Ronaldo, did it once in, for me, one of the great individual seasons by a player, up there with Suarez 13-14 in that season where, as a 20-year-old, he had his one season at Barcelona, 47 goals in that season. And you look at the compilation of goals, some really fantastic goals in there. And then finally, Henrik Larsen did it once for Celtic before he secured his move to Barcelona. So in my research, that's all the players I found who have had 40, or all the all-timers. Oh, and sorry, Romario did it once, 66 in Brazil. That was at a later time, so maybe you can ding him a bit for that one as well. But still an incredible feat, 45 goals in a season. And just to reiterate how impressive it is that Lewandowski finds himself as a three-time player who has got 45 goals. I can't remember if I said Gerd Muller, but that draws Lewandowski level with Gerd Muller for 3 45-goal seasons. Although Gerd did get 150 and 160 in there, so still a bit of catching to get to 60. But just to reiterate how impressive it is that he's a three-time 45-goal a season guy. The players who haven't done this, Alfredo Di Stefano never did it. Ferenc Puskás never did it. Marco van Basten never did it. Raul never did it. Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. Thierry Henry. Alan Shearer. Diego Maradona. Ruud van Nistelrooy. Harry Kane. Andrei Shevchenko. Sergio Aguero. Didier Drogba. Mo Salah and Kylian Mbappe still have not got 45 goals in one season. So some really all-timers there who never accomplished this feat that Lewandowski has now done 3 seasons in a row. So my question to you, Nev, is where on this list does these achievements and this achievement in particular put Robert Lewandowski for you?
He's probably going to go down as like one of the all-time great strikers. But what's even more like amazing to me is that he's doing it like now in like the later part of his career, like when people usually drop off in form. Like he's finding his form, as I think he's 32 or 33, so he's been finding his form in his 30s, whereas like most people find that in their mid to late 20s. But I think the numbers speak for themselves, the achievements speak for themselves. And I think, he will definitely go down as an all-time great. The only, I guess, disappointment is, and like it's no fault of his own, or like and you can say this for a lot of other players, like he's playing for Poland, which he can't get that World Cup or that European Cup, like that Euro, like it's just not on the cards for them. Whereas like Ronaldo's had it, he's won it with Portugal. He's won a Euro with Portugal, and a lot of these other players, they've won like a World Cup or a Euro for their country. So he just doesn't have that international pedigree, I suppose. But that's you can't mark him. You can't mark him like badly for that. You can name other players that have had that haven't had the luck of, I guess, being born for France or Brazil or an Argentina, one of those strong countries that is always in the contention to win a major trophy.
Yeah, of course. And I guess the thing that sticks to my mind when you talk about that is the best case scenario for a player like Lewandowski, who's playing for Poland, who are the weakest nation. I mean, they have some good players in there, Szczesny, Zielinski. the best case scenario you really could look at is maybe a golden boot at a World Cup, or even a golden ball if Poland go deep, maybe to the semis, get a good draw like Croatia did in 2018, and can ride that all the way deep into the tournament, and then potentially, if he was a big factor in that, he could look at a golden ball. Obviously, golden boot's never off the cards for a goal scorer like him, and that would be the equivalent for him, given that he's Polish, of winning a World Cup for someone who plays for, say, Brazil or France or one of those more powerhouse nations. Um, I want you to also hold on to that thought about how it's unfortunate that some players can't win the biggest prize in our game on account of what nation they're from. Or I wouldn't say can't, but makes it very difficult for some. So hold on to that for the next topic. But I also wanted to ask you, would you put Robert Lewandowski as the favourite for this year's Ballon d'Or?
I think it depends how far behind go in the Champions League. The other, I guess, thing that we need to look at is that it is a World Cup year, and the final is it scheduled to be played before Christmas?
Yeah, if just before Christmas.
Yeah, so that obviously plays a big factor. Like you had Cannavaro win it in 2006 based off his performance. And then Messi or Ronaldo won it in the other World Cup years of 2010 and 2014, even though they didn't win the World Cup. But you had Modric win it in 2018, then he got to the final. So that always seems to be very weighted when doing the votes. It seems like that did the player either win the World Cup or carry their team to the World Cup, and that seems to be worth more than someone's individual performance throughout the year. So if what you said, where maybe he gets to a quarters or even a semi with Poland, and he wins the Golden Boot, then and also maybe gets to the semis or wins the I think he needs to win the Champions League as well. But yeah, if he can obviously have a good season in terms of that, winning those major trophies or getting a deep run in the World Cup, then that will help his case, and he might finally get that Ballon d'Or.
Yeah, he was robbed of it in 2020 when they called it off. That's an absolute farce, and he absolutely should have got it that year. I thought it was
100%.
Yeah, kind of disgraceful that they called it off there, because I mean it's a pandemic. You don't need to have the big awards show. Just hand out the award for who was the best player of the year, and he was definitely the best player of that year. So I feel like that should almost be an unofficial award given to him. But for everything else that you said, I totally agree, and I couldn't have really put it better myself. So with that being said, I kind of want to move on to my next topic. And for this, I mean, we've had an international break. I thought it was a good time to maybe think about something that's happened in the recent past. Something so controversial that people were marching in the streets when it was proposed, and that, of course, is the European Super League. And I mean, when I saw all of this going down, I thought the reaction was way over the top. When people are marching in the streets in one of the peaks of a pandemic because of what's happening to sport, I thought it was quite over the top. Maybe not way over the top, because the key point that I understand everyone's frustrations was no relegation. So no hope for anyone who wasn't in that league to be in that league one day. And when you think relegation, that's probably one of the things that makes football, especially European football, where you've got so many clubs in such a condensed space, which will also be a factor in the point I'm going to try and make. But when you've got relegation, you've got that opportunity for teams to have something on the line when they're not challenging for a title or anything like that. Makes it so much more interesting to watch, and that's a great advantage that football has over over a lot of sports. And the sport that I'm directly going to link this Super League back to is basketball, one of my other, probably my second favorite sport behind football. And why I asked you to hold on to the fact that it's unfair for some players to be born into countries that can't win the biggest prize. I think if we can do a Super League right and encapsulate what makes the NBA great in terms of a competition where the best players in the world all play against each other week in, week out, and it all ramps up to one sort of month or a 6-week period at the end of the season where all the attention is on the best players and the best teams in the world playing against each other at the end of the season. I think you almost have to put that as, if it's done right, as good an accomplishment as a World Cup. And another thing, and why I think about this idea, and before I describe how I would want to do it, but another reason I think about this idea so much is because when I'm going on these wiki deep dives, you have to look at so much. You have to look at league goals. You have to look at who are they scoring the goals against. You have to look at how many goals were they scoring in this competition or that competition. Which trophies did they win? So when I'm looking at that, I have a weighted system in terms of a World Cup is the best one, then a continental team cup, and then a Champions League, and so on and so forth as you work your way down. Now, if we had a competition where the best players were all playing in one league, then you don't have to look anywhere anymore. All that information is right there. So Mo Salah's in the same league as Robert Lewandowski, who scored more goals in that season, and then you can make deductions from that a lot easier. And that's why when you talk about comparing all-time greats in NBA, I feel like that conversation is so much more fun because everyone played in the same league, and that league was undoubtedly the best in the world. It had the best players in the world. And so I think something like that in football can work because, I mean, ultimately all the best players already play in Europe for the best teams in Europe. Europe, as you know, having just a couple of weeks ago taken yourself off to Paris, you know that it's the ease of mobility around Europe, especially for these big clubs with money, is everywhere in Europe is pretty much accessible for these clubs easily as well. So travel really shouldn't be a problem. So I just think it's possible, and I think it would be interesting if we adopted something like that. So before I go into my formatting for something like that, what do you think of the points I've made so far?
I think they're interesting, like especially how you said that when you're going to be comparing all-time greats, then it's easier to compare them because, like for instance, right now we have as like the top strikers, we have, for instance, like we have Kane, who's not playing in the Champions League. We have Lewandowski, and we have Benzema. Now, and I guess you could sort of throw Mo Salah in there just because he is racking up those numbers, even though he isn't one, like compared to the other three, he isn't like that classical number 9. Now, Liverpool haven't faced Bayern this year. They haven't faced Real Madrid. Bayern haven't faced Real Madrid either. Like they haven't played off against each other, so we haven't seen them go head to head. So we can't compare. It's hard to like compare them like who the better team is because I want to throw this in. Like I always sometimes think about football. Sometimes is like a boxing matchup. Like you have someone that's someone who's more technical and has better like ability, whereas you have someone that relies more on their athletic ability rather than their technical ability. And sometimes you have those matchups. Yeah, you have different matchups and different styles where like one matchup can beat one style and another one can beat another. So you can't always say, oh, this just because this team is ranked number 1 or whatever. They when they actually come face to face with each other, then that's where sometimes a lesser team can come out on top. Like we had it in the 2010s, and even like the late 2000s, where Chelsea always seemed to have Barcelona's number, and like even though Barcelona was more technical, but Chelsea was the more physically superior team, whereas Barca just ran over like other teams. Like Barca ran over Arsenal, even though Arsenal was at that time they were competing against United, and they weren't getting smashed by United every time they played them, but or like Arsenal would always struggle against Chelsea as well. So you had those matchups where like one team would always have another team's number, but then Chelsea wouldn't, for instance, have a team's number that Barcelona would always smash. So what you said about that, where they're playing week in, week out, competing against the best, I think that's that does make an interesting and compelling argument.
And I guess in addition to your matchup point, it adds a layer of intrigue now if we see that going into, say, if we propose a playoff format. Now we get to see these best teams, maybe how they match up against each other in, say, a series format. And on top of that as well, I just wanted to add that UEFA planning to change the format of the Champions League in 24-25 anyway. So we might have a good opportunity to completely change it, especially as well post-pandemic. I mean, it feels like a good opportunity for us to maybe change the format into something more exciting week in, week out, because, I mean, with all due respect, those weekends where City are playing Norwich and Liverpool are playing Watford, I mean, come on, would we not rather be seeing Liverpool play Real Madrid and Man City play Bayern Munich in that week? I mean, for me, I just want to watch the elite play each other. But all of that is predicated on a fundamental of football that's been there since the start, is that teams from lower leagues have a chance to get into this top league. So my proposed format must have relegation in it. And if you don't have anything to add, I'll go into the format that I would like to propose.
Well, I'm definitely interested in hearing your proposal. So I'm not gonna add anything because there might be something that you actually touched on. You might actually answer some of my questions anyway. But yeah, so I'm interested to hear your proposal, and then I'll rebut anything that I don't agree on, or maybe even ask questions to get a little bit more clarification. But yeah, look, I'm definitely interested to seeing how you would make it work, because when they proposed it, when was it, 2 years ago? It didn't go on the principles of what football was built on. So yeah, I'll leave the floor to you, man.
Well, before I go into my proposal, what was it? Was the big thing for you the fact that there was no relegation and promotion? Was that the sticking point for you?
Yeah, and that it was invite only. That was definitely probably the biggest factor. The other thing is, like, how do you make it work? Because do these teams still compete in their domestic leagues, or is this their domestic league because there's 20 teams already in there? Like, so that's another sticking point as well, because you can obviously get into the financial side of it, where you take out like a Man United or a Liverpool, who in England, who generate the biggest amount of money, even when they play against like a lower team like a Norwich or a Burnley or something. Burnley and Norwich rely on these big teams to receive funding from Sky and all these other deals that have been made for viewership. So you're going to be taking money away from the domestic leagues as well. So would there be some kind of funneling system down of the finances to help these teams recoup some of the losses that they're going to receive by not playing against the Uniteds, the Liverpools, the Arsenals, and so on. That's another big factor as well, not just the relegation.
Yeah, and I guess, and you're 100% right with that, and I have thought about that, but in the new system, I guess you look at it as a way of saying now the national leagues are pretty much third tier, maybe fourth tier football. So if you want that influx of money, you better get yourself into one of the European leagues, and you've got to earn it. And that's one of the fundamentals of any sport is competition, and you've got to really earn your place if you want that. It's so now in the new proposal, it's not enough just to be lucky enough to be in the same league as a Liverpool or Man United. You've got to earn your right to be in that league with them. I can't speak on the financials or anything like this. This is just a almost half-baked idea. I mean, that's why I want to talk to you about it, because you'll have those questions and you'll have those concerns as we go through it. Just before we start, I also wanted to touch on the fact that you said, the big clubs, they'll be playing maybe a Champions League quarterfinal or semi-final, and then they'll be on the weekend have to go to some obscure place in their national league. And I think for me, while I don't hate it because that's football, that's what I've watched, I would like to just be able to have my attention on that big club playing the bigger games every week. Every week is a big game, and then all the attention as the season goes on ramps up into this sort of crescendo at the end of the season where everyone's attention is on this sort of playoff system, and it's a grind and it's a gruel, and the best of the best are playing each other, and there's nothing to distract you from that. It's just all this. There's no league football, there's no FA Cup football. It's just all about winning this Super League. And I think that would be fun because the scrutiny and the pressure would be ramped up to maybe World Cup levels. I mean, I just think that would be fun.
Yeah, look, I do have my concerns, but I'm interested to hear your proposal and how you'll do it. But I think now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, I think my biggest concern is the lower league football and the non-league football, and I will address that once I hear what you have to say, because my understanding of those leagues is that they rely extremely heavily on this sort of funneling of funds from the top down.
Yeah, and obviously that's not for me to decide the financial system of how it funnels down, but each league will still be connected. Well, in fact, will be connected, because obviously the original Super League, their whole idea was to not be connected to the rest of the leagues anymore. So I still want it to be connected, and hopefully that funneling would still work in much the same ways. All I'm saying is now the top division of each nation is now more like third tier football rather than the top tier football, because the top tier football is the Super League and then what comes below. But enough talking about that. I'll just go into the format that I would think could have a chance of work and could have a chance for the most entertainment. I guess entertainment is my big concern with this, because at the end of the day, sport is entertainment. So to begin it with, I would have two divisions, maybe three divisions, because I mean the way you look at it now, you've got Champions League, you've got Europa League, and now you've even got Conference League. So they already have three tiers of European competition. So we could probably have three divisions of Super League. But my main focus will be on the top division. And so within that division, you have two conferences, so much NBA style, of 12 teams. And the teams are divided into the north of Europe and the south of Europe. So the north, the big leagues in the north are England, Germany, Netherlands, etc. And in the south, you have Spain, France, Italy, all the Balkan regions, etc. So, and funnily enough, for the first year of the competition, if you go off the UEFA coefficient for each club to organise who's in what conference and who gets to play in the Super League, it actually works out that the top 24 are divided into 12 from each, the North and the South. So that would work quite nicely. So with the conferences, now the idea would be that each team plays the teams in their conference twice, home and away, and then they only play the team from the other conference once. That way, in total, you have 34 games in a regular season, if you want to call it. So now we've limited the amount of games, only by a few on a normal season, but also you obviously don't have Champions League football, you don't have European football to contend with anymore because this is the European football. So it's 34 games maximum for the regular season. Well, I say maximum. Ideally, you'd still have your FA Cups or your national cups in each country. So that will give you a chance to be drawn against other teams, another chance to win silverware. I think those national cups have good history and they're good. They could be a good fun distraction within the season. But I mean, because at the end of the day, we kind of want to limit the football to the essential football and the best football that we could be watching. So now, if we limit it to 34 games and then an FA Cup run, say, players could come into World Cups fresher, they could come into Euros fresh or Copa Americas. So I think now we're only asking players to play one game a week and we get to see their best physical performance. It might end up reducing injury as well. So that could be a bonus side effect. But they're playing the top competition week in, week out, and they're not overexerting themselves in any midweek fixtures, really, or you only have a couple throughout the year. And then below that, I guess you could have a second division, and I've only thought to the second division. I haven't thought about a third division yet, but obviously, whatever the lowest European division is, then the national leagues start feeding their teams up into those Super League 1, 2, or 3, or whatever it is, and they can figure it out, do a playoff system between the winners of each national league, etc. But in the second division, you have two. Oh, sorry, and in the first division, no, in fact, I will go to the second division first. Sorry. Two conferences of 15 teams, North and South again, full home and away season. And then there's no playoff system at the end. Top two, automatic promotion. Bottom five, maybe relegation. And then you can have your national leagues feeding up into that. But in the first division, so much like the NBA, I would love to and be intrigued to see the top 8 teams from each conference. So that's 8 out of 12 enter into the playoffs, and the bottom 2 are relegated straight into Division 2. So in terms of the regular season in that format, thoughts, concerns, what have you got so far?
Yeah, I think that the whole promotion relegation is a little bit messy. And like you said earlier, it's I guess you said that it's sort of half baked, where like you're trying to make the argument for this league, and I'm liking the sound of it. Like it's becoming a little bit more palatable. But yeah, I think there's obviously that whole nitty gritty of the promotion relegation. Like it definitely does sound interesting. But like for instance, you said the bottom 2 go down from like the Super League to the Super League Div 2. Now,
yeah.
In the NBA, you obviously get like sometimes I think like during the 90s, the East was stronger than the West, and now in recent memory, the West has been stronger than the East. So how would you then, now let's say that in the North, the North is the lesser conference, and the South is stronger, or vice versa. Do you go one each gets relegated from Northern and Southern Conference, or do you say, okay, in the Southern Conference team, the last place team has 10 points, the second last team has 12 points, but then in the Northern Conference, the two bottom teams have 16 and 18 points. So they've actually accumulated more points than the other two. So do you then relegate the two from the same conference, or do you go one each from each conference regardless of points? Like, how would the logistics of that work? Because you could then argue that we played in the harder conference, that's why we have less points. It's not fair that our team gets relegated, if you get what I'm saying. But I guess that's the getting to the nitty-gritty of it all.
Yeah, but my issue with that is you can already argue that. You can already say that if you're Chelsea, for example, if they're looking at any other league in the world, maybe bar Germany, they're winning that league without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So they can already say, it's unfair that we have to play in the Premier League when we're this good and we could have been winning these trophies. Or vice versa, even for some of the relegated teams from the Premier League, and they go down to the second division. The reason I want to keep it's two in each conference. So only two teams from each conference either miss out on the playoffs or don't get relegated. So the stakes are pretty much always high in each conference. But I would keep it as two from each conference because the divisions below that will stay in their conferences. So you need two from the north and two from the south going up. And as you go lower and take it into as many divisions as you want to and can take it in terms of the European League, you probably want to limit the travel. So for my thinking, I would keep it as two from each conference, no matter what. It doesn't matter if their conference is perceived as being the harder conference or the weaker conference. The bottom two from each of them go down because at the end of the day, it's not a perfect home and away season either because you only play the teams from the other conference once, either home or away. And from your conference, you only play them full home and away. So I would keep it as that. Is it completely fair? No, but I don't know. It's entertaining. It's kind of fun. That's just the card you were drawn.
Yeah, that's fair enough, and I guess that's something that obviously, if it's something that they want to entertain, it's something that will need to be ironed out, I suppose.
Yeah. Anything else on regular season format?
No, not at this point. I don't think there's anything really comes to mind, like any questions about.
So you don't mind playing home and away against the teams from your own conference and then just once against the other team? I mean, that way you do get to play everyone in the Super League at least once as well.
Well, I guess with that, like for instance, now let's just say, I guess like because you'll be playing an even amount of games, so you'll be playing 12 games against the other conference.
Yeah,
you could play 6 home, 6 away, but then at the same time, like what if you're like, let's say you get the luck of the draw, and I guess you could just say, oh well, that's the luck of the draw, as the final argument. But like, let's say you and you don't know, like you know the draw going into the season, but then during the season, obviously, like teams will have injuries and performances will dip and rise and so on. But let's say that come the end of it, and in hindsight, you see that you actually played the bottom 6 teams at home, whereas the top teams you played all the way. So you played, who are the top teams now? Like, so you played Real Madrid away, you played Bayern Munich away, you played Liverpool away, you played Man City away, you played Chelsea away, but then you played, say, a Man United at home, like your home ground. You played an Arsenal at home. You played a Barcelona who's iffy at the moment. You played them at your home ground. So you got a better draw because you played lesser teams at your home ground, whereas you played the tougher games away, compared to another team that might have the opposite. So how would you sort of balance that out? Because you're not playing a home and away tie. You're playing just one tie against the opposite conference. That's another
Yeah,
thing.
and that's why I say it's not a perfect. It's not how it is now in terms of it's a perfect home and away season. But ultimately, the season itself, the regular season, doesn't matter as much because obviously, if you're aware of, and I know you are, but for any listeners, if you're aware of how the NBA works, the playoffs at the end of the year are the revered competition. The regular season now has um, gone to the dumpster. Really, I mean, a lot of basketball fans and a lot of people just don't really tune into basketball until the playoffs. So now in this format, the playoffs are the be all and end all. So yes, I completely get your point. How the draw might be a bit unfair because you're not playing home and away against the other conference. But at the end of the day, that amount of games, it's shouldn't be that significant in terms of because it doesn't necessarily matter if you win your conference or not in terms of the regular season. Now it's all about the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the stakes for it being fair have been taken down a level because the playoffs are where really the be all and end all is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and
Uh, yeah.
well, I wanna hear if that's what you're going to go into next, your playoffs format. I'm not sure if that was going to be your
Yeah.
next, but I'm interested now to
Yeah,
hear
that
that.
was going to be my next, and my playoff format. And there's one thing that I'm open to, and I'll mention it. Well, I'll mention it now. In terms of in the NBA, you go 1 to 8 in each conference, and they're seeded, and then one plays 8, two plays 7, etc., until you got 4, 5, and that's in each conference. I mean, I would be open to looking at just the top 8 from each conference go into a bigger bracket of 16,
Mm-hmm.
and now you're judged on your records in the regular season. And so, say if if the eighth place team in one of the conferences won, I don't know, 28 or let's say 20 games, and then the eighth place team in the other conference won 25 games. Now that team with the 25 wins might have jumped a few of the seeds in the other conference because that was statistically weaker. So I'd be open to it being open to a 1 to 16 bracket, but I would say my preference would be for each conference to stay as 1 to 8. One plays 8, 2, 7, so on. Because for me, and I like this in the NBA, I like when the conferences are separated because it gives you a chance in the playoffs to develop rivalries more so than if it was open to a 1-16 bracket. So for a couple of years in a row, I mean, you mentioned the 90s, and I know why you mentioned the 90s because you're a huge Jordan fan, obviously, and the late 90s where Jordan was making his way through, he had to get through the Pistons. So you got that chance because they were both in the Eastern Conference and they were the best two teams. They would play each other each year. So you got to see the progression of that rivalry, the development of that rivalry. So I think keeping it as conferences gives you a better chance of doing that. In terms of how the series would work, so you'd have obviously when the top 8 are in there, it works as quarterfinals in each conference, and then goes down to semis, and then goes down to the final. Um, each series is a 3-game series, and obviously the higher seed gets 2 games at home. But within that, you must have a result in the game. So we're not doing aggregate scores anymore. We'll go to extra time and penalties if we have to, and we'll get a result in each game. And then if you win the game, you go up in the series 1-0. And then if you win the next game, you win the series 2-0. And if we need to go to a game 3, we go to a game 3. But each game has a result. How And then at the end of all that, the winners of the North and South playoff series and conferences, they play each other in a three game series at the end. And I know that this will lead into what you want to talk about tonight. Now, in the NBA, they do it off record. So if the team who came out of the Northern Conference had a better regular season record than the team that came out of the South, then they'd get home ground advantage. You could do it that way, but because of that fact that you touched upon about it could be a little bit of unfairness in the draw or whatever, what I would propose to do is, and this will lead into your point, is have an all-star game, the North versus the South, and because in the NBA the All-Star game is crap and no one plays hard, maybe in this All-Star game you have the best players from the North versus the best players of the South, and the winner of that game, the team that wins that game, wins their conference home ground advantage. So say Kylian Mbappe is playing for PSG in the Northern Conference, and his team have a real good shout of winning the whole thing when it comes to the playoff time. Obviously, he's going to be more motivated in that game to play a little bit harder so that he might be able to win his team home ground advantage if they make it all the way to the finals. So yeah, I don't know if there's any points that I missed. I'm sure you'll ask the questions now, but that's how I would run the playoff system.
I have my disagreements with that, because if you're gonna have like an all-star weekend like in the middle of the season or like towards the tail end of the season, it does bring the risk of injury, because like what if Kylian Mbappe gets injured in that game, which I know there is a little bit of meaning to the game, but at the same time I don't think it's worth the risk to have him play in that game just so that you can have possibly have one extra tie at home, like for the all round final of the whole entire competition. I think a lot of managers would say that it's pointless, and also I guess comparing NBA to football, like I think when it comes to team chemistry, it's a lot harder to form team chemistry and team identity with 11 players than what it is with 5 players on the court. So, but what my suggestion would be, have your home, like for that final of North versus South, have your home and away leg. But then if there does need to be a third tie to like that series decider, have it already, I guess have like a stadium already booked out, like a Wembley or a Bernabeu or Camp Nou. Like have that ready and on the cards for a possible third leg, if you're gonna go the series, like the 3-leg series. But for me, because it's like I know some people will argue like because it's a final, you shouldn't play once, but like because football is so steeped in tradition, I think just having like a 1-game final and whatever team shows up on the day, they're the better team. And I know that it might, like for instance, like last year we had Chelsea, Man City, and Man City were definitely the better team throughout the year, and Chelsea won it on the day. In a one-off game, they were the better team. If they played 10 times, Man City probably would have won 6 or 7 times. Maybe they wouldn't have. Maybe it would have been 5-5. Who knows? But if we're going to go 3-leg series, I think just have a stadium ready in the background, I suppose. Depending on the logistics of how hard it is to organize that, and but I guess if they're playing once a week, depending on how the schedules go, whether how would your final then be? Like, would you go 1 leg per week, or would you go 3 or 4 days rest and then they play the next game? How would that work? And what do you think of my idea?
I'd probably look at during the playoffs, you do 1 on the weekend, 1 midweek.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to 3 games, it only takes a week total, and then you can start the next series.
Yeah.
And a few things to unpack from your point before. Firstly, I like your idea of 1-1 and then one neutral if you need it. But I will also say that the All-Star game idea could be fun. I mean, I've been turned off it in the NBA because the players just don't play hard at all. But it could be a fun little distraction in the middle of such a taxing season because you're playing the elite, the best of the best, week in, week out, just to give the players a 1 week off, unless you're in the game. But then, like your point, you've got to weigh up that risk v reward. So obviously, the All-Star game isn't the be all and end all. You'd rather actually make it to the final with your players healthy rather than risk it all and play too hard in that All-Star game just for the possibility of that extra game at home. But now you weigh up that risk versus reward. It's like, all right, well, I do kind of want this extra game at home because my team has a legitimate chance of being in the finals. But obviously, I don't want to get injured in this. If I feel anything, I've got to come straight off the pitch because the actual games are more important. And then the added dynamic is obviously the team with the best record will have from each conference at the time of the All-Star game, their manager will manage their conference for the All-Star game. So now they have to weigh up the risk versus reward because you'd think if they're the top seed in each conference, then their chances of making it to the finals will be high. So there's a good chance that they're going to want that seed, but you'd also think they'd have a few, or that extra home game, but you'd also think they'd have a few players in the team. So now they have to risk versus reward weigh that up as well. And then players, obviously, ultimately it comes down to players. They have to weigh that up. But in terms of if you didn't want to do that for whatever reason, I think the 1-1, one neutral is quite a good idea because then you still get your sort of traditional final environment if you're a traditionalist. But I must say I totally disagree with why you like finals as they are. And honestly, when I watch finals, very rarely are they fun finals. And an example I'll use is Chelsea versus Liverpool in the League Cup this year. That was a fun final, but that was a fun final because not everyone was running around with a stick up their ass under so much pressure all the time because it was a League Cup final. You know, it wasn't the be all and end all. It wasn't a do you remember that Liverpool Tottenham Champions League final in 2019?
Yeah, I fell
That
asleep.
was maybe the worst game of football I'd seen that entire season. It was so boring. It was so boring. And finals often go that way. Finals have the chance to go that way because it's a one-off game, like you say, and everyone's walking around and running around like, can't make a mistake, can't do anything wrong. If you have a 3-game series, you've got a bit more margin for error, so teams can express themselves a bit more in that format. And I totally disagree as well because I want the best teams winning at the end of the day. Obviously, it doesn't always work out that way. Injuries play a part in that. Maybe, like you said, scheduling plays a part in that. All these different factors can play a part in that. But if we increase the chances that the best team overall wins the competition at the end of it all, then I'm all for that.
I think you're wrong on the whole final thing because like we've even seen two-legged semi-finals where they've been really boring as well, and teams go out being more cautious, more defensive in both legs. So, and I think that's just the nature of football, like where you can set like you're scoring like the possibility of scoring one goal in a game is very low, whereas like you're comparing it to a sport like basketball where like you might have by their standards low scoring games where like each team scores 70 points, but then you might have high scoring games where each team scores 100 points, 120 points. I think that's just the nature of football where you can set up defensively if you want, and like I said, you've seen teams set up defensively for both legs, whether it's the semi-finals or quarterfinals. And yeah, like I said, that's just how football is. And like if you want to see more exciting finals, then you need actual rule changes to the games where I don't know, maybe add a shot clock or something, which will encourage teams to actually shoot and attack more. So have a 1 minute or a 2 minute shot clock or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, but I think with that, I wasn't comparing football to basketball in terms of the actual
I
game.
get that.
I was comparing football finals to, and here's a perfect example: the final that we just talked about, 2019, terrible, all right, truly terrible. But the semi-finals were the best two semi-finals, especially those second legs in back-to-back days where Liverpool won 4-0 against Barcelona at home, and Tottenham came back and Lucas Moura scored that hat-trick at the Johan Cruyff Arena to send Tottenham through. Staggering mornings of European football in the two-legged ties. Also, in addition to that, in this new system, playing for a 0-0 doesn't help because you've got to win the game eventually. So there needs to be a result at the end of the game. We're not playing for 0-0s and we're not playing for away goals anymore. You have to win the game. Now, however you go about winning the game, whatever. That's football. Okay, so some teams may think, hey, the best way for us to win this game is to get 0-0, get all the way to penalties, and then maybe we can win in penalties. Whatever. That's football. That's each team's prerogative to approach the game how they want to approach it. But you must either win or lose that game in that night or in that day. So I think that in itself somewhat removes that sort of cautious thing. And at the end of the day, you've got to win two of them. You've got to win two of three. So obviously you're going to get those discrepancies in tactics, and I'm fine with that. I'm not asking football to there to be as many goals or buckets as basketball. And that's what makes football great, that there's so much tension around a goal. So I'm fine with whatever way that teams want to approach the game, but at the end of the day, there must be a result.
I still don't think it fixes the cautious nature of how a manager or a team wants to set up, because like you just said, someone can aim over all three legs or over all two legs. Someone can aim for going to penalties in both games.
But when you go in with a tactic like that, you are relying on luck at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And now you've got to win two. It's not just enough to get lucky on one day. You need to get lucky on 2 days. So I think if I was approaching that as a fan, you've got to think that then now the chances of the better team going through are increased. Because now if a team wants to approach a game and just sit back and be cautious the whole game, they have to rely on luck, and they have to do it twice.
Yeah, and I guess when you talk about, like, if you're talking about probability and odds, yeah, like you have a point there, and I get that. But yeah, I still, if we're talking about like having a one-legged final, I still think that's like you can cite examples over the last 10, 15 years where you've had super exciting finals and then you've had really boring ones as well. So I think it swings both ways. Like what's that saying? Swings and roundabouts or whatever. So you sometimes have exciting finals and sometimes you have really boring ones. And generally the boring finals is when you have two teams that play in the same domestic league. Like that 2019 final that Liverpool won. That would have been much, 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 much more exciting if Ajax went through. 100% more exciting if Ajax went through. But, and then, like you had last year. Last year's final was a little bit boring as well, to be honest. Chelsea, Man City. And again, two teams from the same league. But then you had the one with PSG, Bayern. Again, two teams from two different leagues, and it wasn't the most exciting final, in my opinion, from memory.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of it. And I totally get that sometimes you just got to get good finals, sometimes you got to get bad finals. But the pressure around a one-off game as a final, when your whole Champions League campaign comes down to that, I just think sometimes can cage up the players a lot. And on your domestic teams point as well, this format, you can never have a final with two teams of the same country.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I get that. But
yeah.
do you have anything else to add to that, or because
no, as far as my half baked idea goes, this is as far as I've baked it so
yeah,
far.
look, I don't mind the idea as like when like you said, it's half baked, and when it's just when you have that sort of that thought, you think about, like, I guess the top layer, and like you're like, okay, this is how it could probably work, and then obviously you have the layers beneath that, in terms of logistics and scheduling
Yeah,
and all that sort of stuff, and
yeah,
that's when you start to, and finances, and that's when it starts to get more complicated. And you mentioned that teams would compete in the FA Cup, for instance, or the Copa del Rey, so they'll still compete against domestic teams in those competitions. And I do want to mention that, and obviously, like, the whole financial side, like, we're not necessarily, we're not accountants or anything like that, but I do know that the domestic league, especially in England, a lot of the money, especially I think the Carabao Cup, I think like all of the proceeds go to the EFL. So they go to, like, League One, League Two, and the non-league teams. So like all those teams rely on the Carabao Cup. So that's why it's such an important competition for them, and not so much for the Premier League teams. The FA Cup, if you get like a League Two team get drawn against a Chelsea, even if you play at Chelsea, you get a portion of the entire ticket sales. So, like, as a League
yeah.
Two team playing away at like a Stamford Bridge or an Old
Yeah, it
Trafford
can
or something,
sometimes be better.
yeah, that could be like half of their year's revenue for some of those teams, when they're paired up. So, like, some of those teams absolutely love playing against those top four, top six teams away, just for that reason. Even though they know that they're going to get smashed, most likely, like 9.9 times out of 10 they're going to get smashed. They're going to pocket, like, 100, 200, 300 grand. So, like, with those things in mind, like, yeah, I guess, and it's something that, you'd probably need to think about a little bit more. Like, if they want to look into organizing it, they need to think about how this would not detriment the domestic teams. Because, like, Leicester, for instance, I know they have a rich owner, but like they were on the verge of getting Champions League last year, but now they didn't get it, so they missed out on like all of this money. But imagine them also not playing against, so they don't play against Arsenal, they don't play against United, Chelsea, Liverpool, City, Tottenham. So that's 6 teams that they don't play against. That's 12 games that they don't get TV ad revenue from, just because those, like, 6 teams potentially have all left the league, whether they're playing in the Super League Div 1 or Super League Div 2. So the domestic leagues are going to be severely, like, it's not just a couple of million they're going to lose. They're going to lose, maybe 100 million or like 150 million all round, not just one team losing that much money. But yeah, that it would be a massive hit to those middle of the league table, team table, and also the bottom as well. So it's a major consequence to those teams, which makes that probably an equal reason why this didn't sit well with a lot of people, not just the relegation and or lack of relegation promotion. It was also how it would negatively impact the financials of middle of the table teams. So that's I think that's equally important. So that's something that would need to be, I guess, thought about like how does the Super League feed the finances down into the domestic leagues?
Yeah, and they need to find a way for it to have the trickle-down effect. But if I'm completely honest with you, and the dirty little secret for me is I don't really care about those smaller teams. I just don't really care. It's like, sorry, you're not good enough to play against the big boys. Get better. And like, it might be heartless because I'm not a supporter of the little teams. I haven't grown around a local club or anything. But from me watching it from here, and football is such a globalized game now, care about them. I'm sorry. I want to watch the best play the best every week, and I want to be able to, when I do these deep dives, I don't want to have to go as deep. I just want to look on Wikipedia and say there was a European Super League. Who was the top goal scorer in that Super League? Who won the Super League? And then you have all your answers, and that trophy means everything. It's almost as big as a World Cup for someone's legacy and for a team's reputation. So I just think that would be so much fun. And in addition to that, another little point is I think players would probably enjoy it as well, because you've seen now so many players have that exposure and sort of that love for basketball. Like you think of a few of the French players, Pogba and Griezmann. I know earlier in the season I saw Trent Alexander-Arnold do a Steph Curry celebration after he scored a goal. They're both Under Armour athletes, so I'm sure at some point, if they haven't already, they'll meet. So there's this, footballers have become enamored by basketball, and I think they would probably enjoy that system as well, because they look at basketballers and how revered they are, and in the States or whatnot, and they see the sort of press that they get, and they see the ways that they can make their legacies in playoff series, and I think footballers might be drawn to that as well.
Yeah, I get all that, and I think also like the point that you said at the start, where there would be overall less games throughout the season, and they would be playing every 3 or 4 days. They'd be playing once a week. That would obviously help with performance, and also there'd be less injuries as well. So that's obviously a really important thing to think about. And yeah, like on the eye, like you're getting players playing once a week at 100% rather than playing every 3 or 4 days at 80% or 90%. So that would obviously make for a better spectacle. But yeah, I still think that if they for instance can figure out how the finances get trickled down, and also how a team like, for instance, like let's say Crystal Palace, they're doing fantastic this season. If you take into consideration like the players that they lost, and Vieira coming in as a brand new manager as well, they're going to finish somewhere in the middle. Now, how would a team like Crystal Palace, who wants to be on the up, wants to start competing for for those European places, whether it's Conference League or Europa League, how would a team like Crystal Palace, if they have the opportunity to at least get into like Div 2, the Div 2 Super League, then maybe there is something there. And like I know you mentioned like you don't care about some of those like some of the fixtures, like the lower teams playing against the Cities and the Liverpools and stuff, but Crystal Palace didn't lose to Man City this season. They won and then they drew. So like those teams that are like middle of the pack or bottom of the table, they're still taking points off the top teams. So they're still, I know you said you don't care about them, but they're still competitive.
Somewhat. I mean, we can, if you did the percentages on how often a team from 15th to 20th in the league beat a team in the top three, then that percentage, I imagine, would be quite low. So at the end of the day, you can go into one of those games and you can think 8 times out of 10, I know what I'm going to see. I'm going to see the better team win the game. I don't know exactly how they're going to win the game. I'd probably say 5 or 6 out of those times they'll probably win comfortably 2, 3, 4-0. So look, I get it. The upsets are fun when they happen, and well, unless you're a supporter of the bigger team that got upset, and they still do happen often enough in football. And when I suggest all these things for the Super League, I'm not to say that I absolutely hate the way that football's run at the moment, but I'm just saying, is there a way where we can look at it and it can be a better product and a more entertaining product, especially at the elite level. And also, at the end of the day, it's kind of for selfish reasons because I just want to be able to look at the stats and look at who won what and just have it be so much easier to look at. So in the future, when we're comparing these all-time greats, you can almost do it a bit more in a basketball style because for all the big players, there was only one thing that mattered for their club, and that was winning the Super League.
Yeah. No, I get all that, and I think there's I don't think it should be so quickly dismissed. Like, oh, they want to make a breakaway league or anything like that. But if you can outline the positives, which there are quite a bit of, but if you can also, I guess, fix some of the issues, then there's no reason why I guess it can't be done, because in a way, like you did say that the Champions League format is going to change, and if I can just bring up, I think I have it somewhere, the Champions League format, how it's, I'm not sure if it's finalized that that's how it's going to be done, or if it's just a proposal of how it's going to be done. But 36 teams, so it's going up from, how much is it at the moment? 32. So it's going up, so 4 more teams. Group stages are replaced by one big league table. Each team plays 10 games in the first phase, 5 home, 5 away, 100 additional games all round. The top 8 sides in the league phase will qualify automatically for the knockout stage. Teams finishing 9 to 24th place will compete in a 2-legged playoff to secure their path to the last 16. So, on face value, it sounds similar to your Super League idea. There are some similarities. There's obviously some differences, but the thing is, like, these are extra games on top of the 38 league games that they're going to play. So, like, that means, players at the moment, like, if you go, especially if you make a deep run into your domestic cup competitions and also like this UEFA competitions, you're playing like 60 games potentially.
Yeah.
And what you're proposing is players will play
46 max. 46 max game. If every series goes to 3 games and you win the finals, 46
just in
max
the Super League, But then also, like, if they get introduced in the 3rd or 4th round of the FA Cup, for instance,
you could go up to 50.
Yeah, then they'll end up playing. Yeah, they'll end up playing 15 or 16 games less.
Yeah, it's not a huge drop, but I feel like it's significant enough.
Yeah, and also because they're going to be playing once a week instead of twice a week for a period of time. I know with like the Champions League, it's only like, what is it? Is it from September to December where they play like every 2 weeks they play an extra game. So like, but other than that, it's pretty much once a week that they're playing because of their domestic league. But even so, like, there's still that period of time where they are going to play, 2 games in a week. So if we're going to start looking at the whole player welfare thing and everything like that, then like the Super League does make sense, I suppose.
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch on that again because, like I said, I thought the reaction was a little bit much, but I understood it at the same time because, you need that hope that you can get into that and play against that as well.
Oh yeah,
but
having like a closed off system it's not good because like for instance, like last year you had Arsenal finishing 8th and they signed up to join it, and like over the past couple of years they don't deserve a place.
You can't have it where it's invitation only. You just can't do that.
100%.
But at the end of the day, I'm a bit of an elitist when it comes to sports. So I believe that makes the best product. So that's why I think this would, if nothing else, would at least be interesting and potentially really good for football. But
And
alas, I don't think it's go. Yeah, go on.
and look, I guess from one perspective, I think the Super League was going to eliminate like UEFA as a middleman. So UEFA, there wasn't going to be that organization there to take funds away from the league. Like, I think the teams were going to directly get the money from not the ads, the TV sponsorships. So instead of the TV sponsorships going to UEFA and then being funneled to the clubs, it was going to directly to the clubs. So you're cutting out a middleman that's potentially taking like hundreds of millions of dollars. But if those clubs, for instance, if they have an obligation, or they commit to an obligation where they're going to commit 10 or 20% of the TV revenue to the domestic league, even though they won't compete in it, then potentially you do sort out the financial side where the lower league teams will still get the same or even potentially more money from not competing against these teams on a weekly basis. So maybe, and like, look, like you had UEFA is just as corrupt as FIFA, supposedly. Well, we won't talk in absolutes or definites, but like there's been a lot of stories, and like it didn't. Who was the last president before Seferin? Platini. Yeah, isn't he like in jail or something? So
yeah, there was that big scandal. So.
Yeah, so UEFA doesn't have clean hands with all of this. So look, if you can, if I think if you can definitely sort out the financial side of it, and then obviously have an open system where you have promotion and relegation, then I don't see why not.
Yeah, I think there's ways to do it if clubs and whatever governing bodies don't get too greedy. But obviously, I'm not holding my breath for that. It was just an interesting point you made there. Like I thought when the whole thing was happening as well that the incredible thing about the Super League is it actually made UEFA a sympathetic figure. People had sympathy for UEFA. It was madness. I'm like, what? Have people lost their mind? Like we're fighting for UEFA now?
Yeah.
This thing's corrupt as all hell. What are we doing?
Yeah, and then look
like
what they're gonna do.
I get we can't have it moving forward as it is, but like surely there's some merit in this idea if we can just get it right.
Yeah, and then like look what they're going to do like with this Champions League reformat. Like I think teams are going to end up playing 4 or 5 extra games.
Yeah, it's madness. I don't like the new reform.
So you had players complaining and managers complaining about fixture congestion and playing more games, and it's like, oh yeah, we hear you. We're going to add more games. It's like,
and then
we don't want more games.
Yeah, and obviously on top of that, FIFA want to do the same with every 2 years.
Yeah, biannual World Cup. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And so you take the prestige away from the current World Cup.
Exactly, you take exactly. Players back in the day didn't have the chance to win a World Cup every 2 years. They had to wait every 4 years. You can't have it every 2 years now.
Yeah, exactly. And you have like people saying, oh, but it'll give like, for instance, African nations or like North American teams like the Mexico, the United States, it will give them more opportunity to win. It's like, no, it won't. It'll just have France. We'll just have France stacking up 10 more World Cups, Brazil another 10, like Germany, like that. Those teams aren't going to suffer. They're just going to stat pad. They're just going to like. Yeah, they're gonna end up having like 20 stars on their shirt above their logo.
Yeah, you can't do it.
But you get what I'm saying. Like, it's not gonna help. Having more World Cups isn't gonna help these smaller nations compete. And like, yeah, like yes, it might give them a little bit more money. Like, but like they're not gonna win it. Like realistically, they're not gonna win it.
Couldn't agree more, mate. Just to finish up on tonight's pod, I thought we'd go through some of the fixtures upcoming as club football returns. Long awaited. We're all itching to get back, but I must say, looking at the Premier League fixtures in particular, quite uninspiring to come back to. I mean, I think we're all sort of hoping. Well, we're not all sort of hoping, but as a neutral, we're probably hoping that Man City and Liverpool can win their games this weekend, so that it remains a 1 point gap going into that crucial game next weekend at the Etihad. Have anything tickle your fancy in the Premier League? Anything you see that you like?
I think if Leicester were better this season, Man United Leicester would definitely be an interesting game. I think it still can be an interesting game because although Leicester have been poor this season, they did beat Liverpool, even though that was like 8 or 9 weeks back or longer. I can't even remember now. But
it was around that Christmas period.
Yeah, so they've taken points off some of these teams, and they've looked good in some of these matches against the top teams. So they could potentially take points off United there. That's a really important game for United, and it is a tough game. You have West Ham, Everton. That's a really important game for Everton. West Ham, I think they're out of the top 4 race. Like, they're obviously still there, but I think that I think it's over for them. Like, just have like the other 3 teams that are above them. They have games in hand, and they're playing slightly better. So I don't know what your thoughts are.
And they've got Europa League to concentrate as well. I mean, we talked about that going into that Tottenham game, didn't we? That whoever lost that, particularly if it was West Ham, that might give them that excuse to just focus on Europa League. So I would agree with you there. If they're not out of it, they're clinging on by their fingernails to try and get into that top 4.
Yeah, I think Tottenham Newcastle could be an interesting game as well. Probably less so now, just because Newcastle I think they're safe from relegation, so they're probably not as. They might not be playing like out of their skin as much as what they would have been a couple of weeks ago, but it still could be an interesting game because Newcastle have been playing pretty well. And
I'd also add to that Newcastle's plan is much bigger than this season. So I think they want to keep rolling on with good performances to finish the season, and I think that's kind of important for them, especially when they've brought in these the new players that they have. They'll want to start forming bonds between the players that they've bought. Particularly, I think Guimaraes looks like he's a really important player for them in the future. So I think it will be important for them to finish in the long term. But I agree with you. I think they're as good as safe now as well.
Yeah, and then there's a really... I actually reckon it's a big game between Crystal Palace and Arsenal. Like, not necessarily Crystal Palace, but like they're coming off that City draw pretty much, and Arsenal, they just bounced back and beat Villa like after the Liverpool loss, and it's Vieira versus Arsenal. Feels like that. Obviously he's not going to go in there open arms, going to try and give points to Arsenal as much as we would wish for him to do that. But yeah, that could be an interesting game just because of how well Palace have been doing overall, like this season.
Definitely, and Arsenal need to keep winning to stay in that top 4. So that's obviously interesting. And who knows? I think Leicester are more than capable of helping you guys out as well. They've still got a lot of quality in that team. I don't know if Vardy's playing or not, but obviously he's so crucial for them. But if they've got Vardy and they're playing how they can, they could definitely beat United. No doubts about that.
And I think Vardy has a really good record against United as well. Like, he bangs goals in for fun. So that it's just a shame that he hasn't really been fit this season.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think Leicester would have done a lot better. But yeah, they've just had their injury troubles, not just with Vardy, but with other players as well. So it's a shame, but if they can at least finish in the top half, it'll be a good result for them, all things considering. And then Rodgers can build on from there. But yeah, I think it's also going to be interesting how Arsenal approach the game, because they're playing on Monday. So like all of the games, that's the last game of the round. So they're going to see how West Ham went, how United went, and how Tottenham went. So if, for instance, if United drop points and if Tottenham drop points and West Ham, like if all 3 drop points, will Arsenal have the mental fortitude to say this is must win, or we can go in a little bit relaxed because all the other teams around us have dropped points. So that's going to be interesting to see how the young players deal with a weekend of potentially good results if they all drop points, or even like a weekend where all three teams pick up points. It's like, well, nothing's changed. We still need to win the game. But at least now they know going into it, there's more pressure on us. We need to win this game. So I like the little mental, like thinking about little mental battles and things that are going on with that top four race.
And, who knows, maybe if all those teams around you get good results during the weekend and you guys are under more pressure on the Monday night, maybe Arteta will have a little moan about the fixtures setting them up later in the weekend, putting more pressure on his players. I don't know, so words to that effect.
Yeah. No, I think on that podcast like that we did,
we touched it.
Yeah, I think he had a point, but at the same time, like you could go either way on his thoughts on that. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. And do we see City and Liverpool maximum points, both of them? Liverpool have the chance to go top of the table, obviously, because they play earlier than
For a couple
City,
hours.
and for a couple of hours. But I see them both getting maximum points. I don't know if you see any potential spanners in the works.
Watford. So it's only more so that they're both bottom of the table. Like they've both lost 4 of their 5 games. Yeah, I don't. If either of them drop points this weekend,
It'll be devastating.
Man. Yeah, I guess in a way, City, because they have that 1 point gap. If let's say they lose to Burnley, but then they beat you guys, they go top again. So
yeah, things go back as they are.
Yeah, so
I think going through those percentages as well, where I gave City the 65% chance to win it, I think we litigated that in that. But I will say City and Liverpool recently have not been at their swashbuckling best. I mean, they've had to grind out results, both of them. So you never know. I mean, there is that chance always. What's the cliche in the Premier League? Everyone gives everyone a test, whatever it is. So I expect them both to win, but they haven't been rolling teams over either of these teams really.
Yeah, I think with City though, like they create so many chances. Like they create 15, 20 chances in a game, but they just don't. Sometimes they can bang in five or six like with ease, but then sometimes it just won't go in the back of the net no matter how many chances they create, how many clear cut chances they create. And yeah, I guess that's just how football goes. But it's not like they're not creating chances, and they're still creating chances. So you'd obviously give them the upper hand to win the title. If they were going to games and they were getting 1 or 2 shots on goal, that's when it would be a concern. But they're still getting 10, 15 shots on goal every game. So I don't think it's the biggest issue, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. And as a coach or a manager, I think most of them would agree that as long as we're creating chances, we're nearly there. So, and they create so many of them, obviously.
Yeah. Whereas Liverpool, if I just go off of the Arsenal game, they had 9 shots, 3 on target. Obviously, 2 of those went into the back of the net, but
yeah.
What was the game after that? That they didn't play the following weekend because they had the FA Cup, but the one before that they played Brighton. 18 shots, 9 on target. But when I was watching that game, they even struggled to sort of break down Brighton for periods of the game as well.
Yeah,
they didn't look at
Liverpool,
their clinical best.
And the thing is, I think you hit the nail on the head. Liverpool are a team with probably, if not better, more clinical players in the front areas, but they're not a team that controls the game like City. I mean, everyone knows by this stage of the season if you watch a Liverpool game, you're watching the ball go back and forth. You're watching chances at both ends. Obviously, more at the more chances Liverpool are creating, but they're giving away so many chances. Obviously, you know that the game's like that, but they still have a pretty exemplary defensive record, and that's mainly down to probably Fabinho, Van Dijk, and Alisson being so good individually. They can deal with the workload that Klopp puts on them to get all those players forward, but in that they don't control possession, they don't control even territory so much. They just create chances and they take them really, and that's what's keeping them going in this title race.
Yeah, and I think their bench has strengthened quite a lot.
Yeah,
like,
the depth in the squad.
Yeah, I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, like you'd look at their bench and they just had like Oxlade-Chamberlain on there, and that's it from memory. Like they had no one to bring on like of quality, whereas now they have like they have Diaz to bring on, or Salah if he's not in the starting 11, or Mane, and like Jota and Firmino. They have Fabinho in there as well, and Thiago and Keita and Oxlade. Like they have so much quality to bring on now. They can and each of them can win games. And like I think looking at the benches, I think Liverpool might have a stronger bench just by a player or two over City.
Interesting. I mean, I think, yeah, that might be the case. In fact, I mean, City, you always see their bench. They maybe have like 2 or 3 youngsters from the youth academy, but they always have 4 or 5 world class players on there as well.
I think in the last couple of games, like this might also be because of COVID and injuries, but they've had like 2 keepers on the bench in the last couple of games from what I've seen. So like, if you like just to fill your bench, you need to put 2 keepers on. Like, you're struggling then. I think like slightly struggling. So
well, they also have so many subs nowadays as well. You can put on the bench, but do you remember the days where you could only put 5 subs on your bench?
Yeah, I remember that. But now you can have
crazy.
like 8 or something.
Yeah, I remember having to play FIFA or Football Manager and having 5 subs on the bench, and you'd be scratching your head like, who do I want to put on my bench?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty uninspiring week in the Premier League. I mean, maybe it'll turn out completely different and we'll get shocks galore, or we'll just get brilliant football. But looking at it from this point, not too much to get excited about, except for the fact that club football's back. Serie A, we have a couple of pretty tasty fixtures. I mean, Napoli, second place Napoli play 5th place Atalanta, and 3rd place Inter play 4th place Juve. And honestly, the big shock when I looked at this fixture and looked at the table going into this fixture, I can't believe Juve are 4th in the league, and if they beat Inter, they go above them, albeit Inter have a game in hand. But how have this Juve team got themselves to a place where they're that close to Inter and they're honestly not that far from the title even? I mean, I think they're only 7 or 8 points behind. I mean, we've seen in the past Man City, their first Premier League title, they came back from 8 points back late in the season against Man United. So even the title's not out of the question for them. And honestly, I can't understand how this is the fact for the life of me, because I mean we talked about it after that Champions League tie against Villarreal, how disappointing and poor they were. So to see them in that position in the league and so close to Inter above them, but also not that far from the title is I don't understand it personally. I mean, maybe Vlahovic coming in the transfer windows had a little bit to do with that, but that team looks so uninspiring against Villarreal in the Champions League.
Yeah, I don't think Allegri's really got them firing on all cylinders. Like last season, Pirlo was the coach last season. Yeah. Like they sort of regressed, and now like Allegri's trying to rebuild with the same squad. I think they just, and like that team has been together for like, they added like a handful of new players, but like there's just so many players there that have been there for years that like maybe they've just gotten stale and like they need to really shake things up like maybe this summer.
Yeah, but also on that fact, Chiellini and Bonucci haven't been playing too much. I think when I look at this team, Allegri, as much as I love him as a manager, I think he's a top manager, or he has been at least. But this isn't the team for him. This isn't a team of stars, of well established international players in every position. This is a team that's in transition and needs to be developed and find the cohesion between the group of probably younger players who are trying to get to that level where they're established international players and stars. And he's always, to me, had the look of a manager who manages the stars. He's a man manager. He likes having those big personalities in the team and getting them to mesh properly. I don't think he's in that mold of the guy who's on the training ground. And obviously, I don't know from inside, but he doesn't seem like that kind of guy. He seems like the guy who is a traditional manager, not so much of a coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and that Napoli-Atalanta game, Atalanta have slipped back a bit of fourth place, but Napoli is still right there, just behind Milan in the title race. I think it's a really pivotal game for Napoli, who have a lot of good players, and it's probably a good thing for them that they look like they should finish top four, because, well, to be fair, I've thought this for years, but that team is kind of ripe for the picking for some of the richer clubs around Europe. I mean, we offered the duos in the last pod or two pods ago with players like Fabian Ruiz and Victor Osimhen and Piotr Zielinski's there. The one who I'm absolutely astounded who is still there, because there's so many teams with who need a player in this position and a player of that quality, is Kalidou Koulibaly. I can't believe he's still there when teams like Man United are paying 80 million for Maguire, and you've got this guy who for years there was every bit as good as Virgil van Dijk, and I think he's pretty much got to that level again this season. So I'm astounded that a player of his quality is still at that team.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he didn't go I think it was two or three seasons ago when they were really talking about him and going for like 60 mil. Like I'm really surprised that neither Man City or Liverpool, especially for 60 mil, for that
Yeah,
quality of defender, neither of them went for him. Even in United, like United didn't step
United
in for
need.
him. And then I'll throw Arsenal into the mix because they paid 52 mil for Ben White this season. Like, and I think that season or that transfer window they paid like 80 mil for Pepe. So like, why didn't they step in and grab him for 60?
And honestly, it was, and I was saying it at the time. The dream of mine was, I think it was that season we won the Champions League, and obviously Virgil van Dijk was second in Ballon d'Or voting. And the dream for me would have been to go out and put Kalidou Koulibaly next to Virgil van Dijk. That for me would have been an impenetrable wall in front of Alisson and behind Fabinho. And I just think that is such an intimidating defense if you could have got those two together. I mean, I'm not going to question Liverpool signings at all, because now we have such a strong squad. Maybe definitely one of the strongest in Europe. So, and then after years of Klopp being there and Michael Edwards running the show behind the scenes, I've come to realise you don't question Liverpool signings under this current regime, because they get them pretty much all right. If they get 4 right, they've only got 1 wrong out of it. So 4 out of 5 are normally right. So
yeah,
that was my dream at the time, because I rate Kalidou Koulibaly so highly. He's such a good centre back.
Yeah, and last season you guys had that injury to Van Dijk. Like maybe you wouldn't have struggled to get top 4 had he have been there to fill that void. Like if it was him and Matip or something like that, then maybe you guys would have finished second or third. Like for instance,
You're gonna love this, but Liverpool's whole season last season came down to the loss of Dejan Lovren. I thought, what in the transfer window, I thought we've let him go. He went off to, I think it was Zenit.
Yeah.
We let him go, and we never replaced him. And the season before that, City were miles off us because they didn't have enough centre backs. Because they planned to use Fabinho as Fernandinho as a centre back, just like I think we went into the next season planning to use Fabinho as an emergency centre back if we needed to. And like the thing that annoyed me so much about that was that Liverpool had the chance to see the mistake that City made, and they made exactly the same mistake. Because I think that summer City let Otamendi go and they didn't replace him, and then they had all those injury problems at centre back, had a bad season, couldn't challenge for the title. Liverpool did exactly the same mistake the season later, and it drove me nuts. But here we are, we've got our centre backs back, and we're back competing for the league, thankfully.
Do you think that's a little bit down to the ego or arrogance of Klopp and Guardiola? Because Guardiola, for instance, he did transition. He tried to transition Yaya Toure into a centre back in that first season or second season of at Barca, and then he did successfully transition Mascherano into a centre back as well. And I think even at Bayern he played Alaba at centre back a couple of times too. So he has this history of changing players' roles, and like he changed Philip Lahm into a holding mid or a centre mid as well. So yeah, he has that history of doing that.
Honestly, I think it was more bad squad planning rather than arrogance to not have a certain amount. And I say you normally should have about 5 and maybe a few youngsters who are good prospects coming through, but you should have 5 centre backs who, at least when you get to the 4th and 5th, you can somewhat trust. But both those teams let centre backs go and didn't replace them. So it may be arrogance in some ways, but I wouldn't call it arrogance just because I actually think they were both somewhat right in saying that Fernandinho and Fabinho could be good centre backs if they were playing next to another good centre back. But obviously it's not all their fault either because you get those bad runs of luck because you have 4 centre backs in your squad. You think, oh, that should be enough. But obviously, if you could label it not arrogance but carelessness on anyone's part, you got to say it was Klopp and Liverpool and the people behind the scenes there because to have the chance to see someone, your closest rival, in fact, to have the chance to see them make that mistake and then make exactly the same mistake the next year, I thought was somewhat indefensible.
Yeah, I think if there's anyone to blame, bloody Pickford, man. Bloody Pickford.
Oh, that was a horror challenge. Oh, that was terrible.
But you know what's the icing on the cake? Wasn't Van Dijk or one of your players offside? So that's why Pickford didn't get a red, and that's why you didn't get a penalty.
Well, they should have given him a red anyway because even if he was offside, that should have been given as a red. But they were checking the penalty because Van Dijk was a sleeve offside, I believe.
Yeah.
And they were checking that for ages, and obviously it would have been a penalty if he wasn't offside. And then even in that same game, Mane got a goal in the last seconds disallowed for another sleeve offside. So
yeah,
that was just a really bad day. That was the day that our chances of winning the title really slipped away. Even though we kind of stayed on pace until Christmas. I think we were top of the table at Christmas last season, which is, when you look at how our season went, is pretty incredible to think about.
And I know that one of these days we'll go into a deep dive into VAR, but like I just want to quickly touch on that, like Pickford not getting a red because Van Dijk was offside. Isn't that the same as? Well, you can make an argument there that when like the player's already blown the whistle and like there's already like a scuffle or like a sort of fight emerging between players, but like you have 4, 5, 6, 8 players all running at each other, and like the ref then hands out yellows or even potentially reds because players were then fighting even though play was stopped. So it's not something that was an on-field tackle. It was something that was done during play being stopped. Like, can you then make that argument that yes, Pickford should have got the red because he still fouled someone despite them being offside.
And not just fouled, he endangered an opponent. So you look at
exactly.
You look at the terminology the refs are going to use, whatever serious foul play or whatever it is. And I think every referee after the game agreed that he should have been sent off, even though the game was dead. But the fact that he endangered an opponent like that meant that he should have been sent off anyway. So
I think that's a ridiculous ruling that just because retroactively something is considered offside or there was a foul in the lead up to another foul or something like that, then what happens afterwards doesn't matter at all, because Van Dijk still missed. The consequence was that Van Dijk still missed the entire season or the entire rest of the season. How is there no punishment then? And I know it wasn't, there was no malice there. I'm sure there wasn't.
But it was reckless.
But it was still reckless, and
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me that that wasn't called, just because something happened where apparently anything that happens after that play isn't considered legal or actionable, just because someone's offside. That's ridiculous to me.
No, you preach it to the choir about VAR, and I think I should move swiftly on before we end up doing the deep dive into VAR, because I know we both get so frustrated.
Yeah, that's upcoming one of these days.
maybe at the end of the season we should have our top 10 decisions that annoyed you during the season. I think I'm already up to 20, to be fair.
I think I've lost count. I'm not even bothering keeping count, because it seems like there's one or two things almost every weekend.
But while we're talking about all these defenders and these good defenders, when I looked at the La Liga table of fixtures, the big fixture over there on the weekend is Sevilla versus Barcelona. Barcelona have a chance to go above Sevilla with a win, which is
that's amazing.
Remarkable to think about the turnaround that Xavi's had there, and they can go into second.
With a game
but I was also looking. Sorry?
With a game in hand as well.
Yeah, exactly. But I was actually shocked to see on the table that Sevilla are, well, not only second, but they've only lost 2 games all season, and I believe they've conceded around 20 goals. It might have been 19 or 21. So they have a really strong defense, but they're just drawing too many games. And when you watch them play, it's obvious that scoring goals was always going to be their problem, because they just don't really have a very good striker. But that defense is quite good. And another player who maybe some of the bigger clubs around Europe should be looking to pick is Koundé as the centre-back at Sevilla, the young French player coming through. He looks very strong, and obviously is a big part of a team that has a very solid defensive record. So he might be one to watch in the summer. But looking at that game, second versus third, that's quite a tasty fixture. Barcelona, I'm kind of hoping that they can go above Sevilla, because I think they deserve to with the work that Xavi's done, and they're such an exciting prospect, as we've touched on in other pods. They've just added also Frank Kessie from Milan, who's going to be coming in the summer, which I think in another pod will make me want to talk about holding midfielders in the world, but that's for another day. But they're definitely on the right trajectory, and that'll be an interesting game this weekend, I think, from La Liga.
Just looking at the league table now, so Real Madrid have 29 games, Barcelona have 28. If they win this weekend, then they'll go up to 57 points. And if they win their game,
are you going where I think you're going? Are you going? Do you think this title race isn't quite over yet?
I think it's back on. If they win the game in hand, and this weekend they're up to 60 points. They're 6 points off. That's two wins.
It's only 2.
And there's 8 games left then. After if that's the case, there's 8 games left.
I know.
A couple of weeks ago, what was it? Did Man City have 12 or 15 points over Liverpool, and Liverpool had a game or 2 in hand? And people were saying that the title race is over. Now look at it; it's 1 point. So and like I think if they can get to 60 points with their game in hand, I think it's definitely a possibility.
I like that. I was somewhat thinking the same actually, especially after the El Clasico win. I
Yeah,
thought, you know what, we talked about it in the pod. We thought, no, well, this result's not really going to mean anything in the title race. I mean, Real Madrid will still walk to it. They might still,
yeah,
but it's not as over as we thought 2 weeks ago. That's for sure.
yeah, definitely. Like it's I think it's opened the door, and it's up to Real Madrid to obviously close that door or let Barcelona through. It's really
Mm.
up to Real Madrid. But if Barca just keep on doing what they're doing, and like over the like how many games have they won in a row? Like since Xavi's come, haven't they won like 10 games in a row or something like that?
It might even be more than that.
Yeah, in La Liga. Oh no, they drew against Espanyol 2-2, but I think they've they've pretty much picked up maximum points almost over the last like 12 or 13 games. They're definitely in for a shout, I reckon. And Real Madrid still have to play Sevilla away and Atletico away as well, out of like the big games, I suppose. And they still have Betis and no, they don't have Sociedad, but they still have Betis as well. Which and they're fifth
But
at the moment.
yeah, I like what you did there. You just added a little extra layer to that Barcelona Sevilla game.
Yeah.
I think I might have to watch that one now this weekend. So thanks for that. That's good. Go on. And finally, the only real standout fixture I saw in the Bundesliga, second place Dortmund take on fourth place Leipzig. As much as all right, actually, I'll throw you at this question: who has a better chance of winning their league title? Barcelona, who are currently 12 points back of Real Madrid, or Dortmund, who are 6 points back of Bayern?
I'd say Barca, to be honest.
Yeah, me
I
too.
think I think La Liga over the last couple of years, it's shown that it can throw more upsets than Bundesliga, especially Bundesliga with Bayern. Like Bayern, you would not be surprised if Bayern go undefeated in a season. You'd be more surprised if they drop points to like a bottom half team. Whereas
If you
like
want to, if you want to be shocked, go back a few weeks, maybe a month now, and watch them ship 4 goals to Bochum. That was unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was watching.
yeah, I think I saw that result, but even in saying that, um, I think Bayern just have such a stranglehold on the league that it'd be more surprising if they lost the league than if Real Madrid lost the league.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. The only little wrinkle that you can throw in there is that in the Bundesliga there's still another Der Klassiker to play. I think it's maybe next week or it's coming up soon. Dortmund Bayern, so that could be a fun game. But honestly, there's probably for the reason that you mentioned, and also I just believe in Barcelona more than I believe in Dortmund.
Mm.
This Dortmund team, I don't think they're as good as they were last year. I know Haaland's been in and out of the team. He's been injured for a lot of this season, and that's obviously a massive loss because he's such a good player. But when I watch this Dortmund team, they're nowhere near as fun as they've been to watch in recent years. And Mats Hummels at the back is looking like an old centre back. He makes so many mistakes now.
Yeah, and like
Honestly,
Emre
yeah,
Can
go
is
on.
filling in at centre back as well. Well, at least in the last game he
Yeah,
filled in. So
he's doing his Liverpool trick.
yeah, so yeah, they've definitely been inconsistent, Dortmund. But I guess like when you lose a striker that's going to bang in 20 to 30 goals for
Yeah.
you for most of the season, where he's playing in and out, that doesn't help their chances.
And I guess another thing you could throw in is, as well as having another Der Klassiker, they've also only got this to concentrate on, Dortmund. Obviously being knocked out by Rangers in that tie in the Europa League, which was a really fun tie actually. But Rangers go into the Westfalen Stadium and scoring 4 goals. I mean, kind of sums up why I don't really have all that much belief in this Dortmund team, and I don't think Marco Rose has had a great impact on this team. I much preferred watching the football they played under Lucien Favre, and I'm completely with you. I have more belief in Barca to overtake Real Madrid, even though they're coming back from double the amount of points back, than I do of this Dortmund team overtaking Bayern.
Yeah. Look, it's over the four leagues that we've looked at. Like there's a title race in EPL, there's a title race in Serie A, there's a potential title race in La Liga.
Yeah, I think we might just be jumping the gun on that, but
I don't know, man. It's 6 points. Like it's two losses that Real Madrid need to suffer, like or 3 draws that they need to suffer out of 8 games. So it's like there is a title race there if Barca can win the game in hand, and if they can win against Sevilla this weekend. Then it is a title race because it's just 6 points. But if they lose against Sevilla and then they draw their game in hand, then
definitely.
Then it's over.
In fact, they probably need to win pretty much every game left, really, unless Real Madrid have a real collapse.
Yeah.
But, anything else you wanted to touch upon?
No, not really. I think we've covered pretty much everything. Like we covered your Super League idea and like how it could potentially work, which I think it's interesting. And I think if like for instance if we could bring on like a financial expert in to
no, I'm not here for that one. You could do that pod, but
but it would be interesting. I just
want the entertainment.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how it can work without being a detriment to the domestic leagues.
That's key.
But like I can definitely see arguments for and against that. So I'm open to the idea of it. And yeah, I guess like looking at this weekend, it's we've definitely got some interesting ties. Some more juicy than others, but yeah, it's definitely going to have my eyes peeled to some of these title races that are happening across the leagues.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to having club football back, that's for sure. Well, thanks, Nev, for giving me a place to finally unload my Super League sort of thoughts that I've been carrying around for 2 years now. I guess I just wanted to go on the record and give some arguments for, because at the time, obviously, all the arguments were against, and it was coming from such an emotional place. I just thought, if we look at it with a bit more rationale, this has a chance of working. So
yeah,
just wanted to outline maybe what I thought about that. But thanks for sitting down, asking the questions, going through it, because I needed that sounding board. So that was good fun. I hope the listeners sort of had fun through that as well.
Yeah, and even if they like leave comments on what they think and what they can, what improvements can be made or solutions.
Yeah, there's definitely things that we've missed. So
yeah, I think it's I think it's definitely an open discussion rather than like a closed discussion. What Gary Neville seems to think about it and stuff.
All right, Nev. It's been fun. It's been real, and we'll see you after the fixtures on the weekend to discuss more of this game that we love.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening in, and Nev, thank you very much for being with us on the pod.
Anytime. See you next week, man.
See you, mate.